All right, my friends, I'm sorry I'm late, terribly late, but there were excuses. I got excuses. Got excuses on the right, excuses on the left, excuses before me and excuses behind me. And to go into all the excuses would just take too much time. So let's go. What are we saying here? The Rebbe, this is a speech, a sicha, a speech of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which he gave in 1959. And he's talking about the names of the Jewish people, which is a nice subject, but it's more important than what we think, because this whole entire book, the second book of the Bible, the five books of Moses, is called names. In English, it's called Exodus, because for a good reason, it's talking about the Exodus, the Jews leaving Egypt. But why is it called names? Well, I guess that's the first word in the first, right in the beginning of the book. Elu Shmot, Bnei Yisrael, these are names. It says the Rebbe, it can't be that it's just because of convenience that it's called by that name. Everything in the Torah has a meaning to it. And not only does it have a meaning, an esoteric meaning, and a homiletic meaning, and a literary meaning, historical meaning, but even more, it has a personal meaning to every Jew especially, and through the Jews, every human being in the world. So what exactly is meaning of it? What's going on? What's the big thing about names? So the Rebbe says, okay, what is a name? A name of a person, we see it does two opposite things. On one hand, it's the most external of the person. You can change, a person can change his name, no problem. But a name, it touches on the essence of a person. A person is asleep or knocked out or whatever. You call his name, and it'll wake up his essence. And not only that, you call the person by his name. You want to find out what the real name of the person is. Somewhere with a name, the person signs his name on a check or something like that. You can take out money from that person's account. Right? The Rebbe didn't say these things, but so a name attaches the person with the world. Right? A person that's living alone, he doesn't need a name. He needs a name for other people. The whole essence of a person is to be in the world, to deal with the world, and here, according to Judaism, not just to be in the world, but to draw meaning into the world, to make the world less worldly and more, how do you say, the meaningful. A word, some that goes along with worldly, less worldly and more spiritually. It's not a good word. More worldly and less worldly and more harmoniously with the Creator. I don't know, for lack of a better word. In other words, to put meaning, order, blessing, life, love, justice, honesty, holiness, beauty into the world. Huh? So there are people like poets and artists and musicians. They take the world and they make it a little more meaningful, pleasant, right? Comedians and philosophers, they can make more. You look deeply into the world. You see that there's more to the world than what we think. The world is not so dull and stuff like this. Well, Judaism comes and puts not just meaning and beauty, it puts ultimate meaning and ultimate beauty and ultimate the reason why it's being created. Okay, so that's the whole idea of the name. A name is the person's involvement in the world comes through his name. So the same thing is that's what it means. These are the names of the Jews that went into Egypt. Only the names of the Jews went into Egypt, not their essence, because the essence of a Jew is connected to God. And the Jews are here to show that everybody is like that. But the essence of the Jews are connected to God. But on the other hand, this essence of God that connects to the name, it gives power to the name. So the Jewish people, when they're in the world, they are always empowered by their source. In other words, the soul upon which the name is given, or to which the name is given. So the name is the most external, but on the other hand, it's external because the essence of a person is to be external, but not to let the external take him over, to be external and to connect the internal with the external, to connect the soul with the body, to connect the creator with the creation. And when we do that, so to speak, and now it gets really sort of weird, this gives power to God. God gives power to us, but we give power to God. This is the reason that God created the whole business. That's the reason he created the whole world. And so therefore, with this, is euch verstanding, it's also understood for us why their sefer, the book is called Shmot. While in them, which in that name of this book, which is called the book Names, this expresses their allgemeiner Einhold, the general content from the book. Their erster sefer, the book, the first book of the Torah, which is Bereshit, Eingrufen, is called Sefer HaYashar. It's called in the Midrash sometimes Sefer HaYashar, the book of the straight. That Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were straight. They were honest, they were truthful, they were straight to God. That, in fact, is the word Yisrael. Yisrael is Yashar, straight, El to God. The first book of the Torah is called Sefer Yashar, because it talked about three people, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they were straight in their conduct in the world, and they were straight to God. Nothing about them was crooked. Because in the first book of the Torah, Redet sich wegen, the Avos is talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, which they're called Angerufen Yesharim, they're called straight. Was by Zay, which by them is nit shayach, it was not relevant, given to be. I mean, I'm on a different computer here today. They're Indian from Emes Golos, but then they couldn't really be really in exile. They were too connected to God all the time. Whatever happened to them, they just looked at it as their job. Thus was Yaakov, that the fact which Yaakov went into Egypt, he did go into Egypt, had sich dann aber noch nicht eingehäuben der Galus. Did not begin the exile of Egypt. Remember, Yaakov, there was a famine, and Yaakov went down with all of his sons. Well, the exile didn't begin then. It happened only after, it says that all of the Jacob and Joseph and all of his sons died. Then it began. Nachmer, even more, the Midrash says, calls him on that all the time that Yosef, Hayakayim, that Yosef was alive, calls him as Yosef, Hayakayim, all the time that Yosef was alive, Loyalem Masoy Shal Mitzrayim, they didn't have the burdens of Egypt. Calls him as Yosef had gelebt, haben sie jeden noch gehabt, auf sich the Masa from Galus. It's just explained in Yiddish. Well, the Avos, because Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their direct children, their sons, the tribes, Zayin and Geven Hecher, they were totally above Zayin and Galus to be in exile. When Esses doch Be'ela told us Yaakov, and it says that the direct offspring of Jacob, that was Yosef. Yosef had Arab gebracht, he brought on unplugged and revealed what Yaakov was. The offspring of Jacob was Joseph. In other words, Joseph, he was the one that really revealed Yaakov. So in other words, saying that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all of their sons, the 12 Shvatim, it wasn't relevant by them they would be in exile. They were too connected to God all the time. No matter where they were, they just felt, okay, this is where God is sending me. The Ershtav was Meis Yosef, only when Yosef died, is Nitnu Alem Moshe. Then they started problems. Noch dem, Meis Yosef, after Yosef died, had men roif gelegt the masa from Galus. That's when their problems will stop. It says, Vayomas Yosef, v'kol achav, v'kol adorahu. Yosef and his brothers, they all died. And that's when it started. And therefore, had zich demel, then, by the sons, Angeneven, they began the service from Shmot. That's when it really began the service of the names of the Jewish people. The names means that, what do we say a name is? A name is an external part of a person, how it comes out into the world. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, their children really weren't separate from their essence in the world. But as soon as they died, then all of a sudden, all that went into exile was the names of the Jews. The Yerida, that was the descent of the Jews into exile and the service of Brach Yitzis Mitzrayim, which brings eventually to going out of Egypt. So in other words, by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all those that were mentioned in the book of Genesis, as it wasn't relevant, exile, because they didn't feel any pain, no matter where they were. They felt this is where God is sending them. But after Joseph died and all of his brothers, then the relative, their offspring weren't so connected to God, and they felt the difficulties of the world. And therefore, is the name is called the name of this Torah portion, and in fact, and from it comes the whole book, is called Shmot, names. And this idea of names, Nogea Tzum Klolos Tochen HaSefer, this is the content of the whole entire book. Val is veist oi, because this indicates the Klolos opened the whole service of the children of Israel, the Jewish people, which came into exile. Number one, why names? How does names show the attitude of the Jewish people in exile? Names. Number one, the Gullus gefin sich nur the shame, because in exile was only found the names of the Jews, the ha'ora, array of the essence of their soul. When the etzem and Hashem, but the essence of their soul, vipalt is hecher, because it's higher from in being in exile. This gives a power to the service, to the ray of the soul, which is in the body. So it's called names because only the names of Israel, only the external part of the Jews went into exile. But because the Jews weren't on such a high level, so they identified with this aspect of their names. Therefore, they were in exile. But the fact is, it was only the external part of the Jewish people that was in exile, and they got constant, let's see, investments, not investments, so there's a better word, inspirations, okay, from the essence of their soul, drip down into the external soul. But they identified with the external soul. They were really in exile. But that external soul, that's called the name. Number two, the avodah darv zayin, the service has to be in bechinas shem. The service, the way that they serve God, has to be in a way of a name. What does it mean? So mavara umayla zayin temguf, to elevate the body. In other words, name is the external. That's where the work has to be done, with the external things. Not just in learning Torah and being connected to these Kabbalistic deep ideas and ignoring this world, which is good because this world is so fickle and so false, which it is. No, exactly the opposite. To deal with the fickleness and the falseness of this world and make it permanent and true. So Mavara and Maila, to refine the body. Nefesh Abamis, the animal soul. Animal soul means your natural personality. And all the things that are in the world, which you come in contact with. That's called the name, the external. Vosdurach dem, by means of this, so to speak, the names of God. Vosdurach dem, which by means of this, there will be the going out of Egypt, and the aliyah, and also the elevation in the essence of the soul. Biz sumachen, until it actually makes okay, there we go. One minute, trying to turn the page here. There we go. They overdid it here. Until it actually makes a mishkan, a dwelling place for God. V'shachanti b'tocham, like I will dwell inside of them, inside of the Jews. B'toch kol echad v'echad, inside of each and every one. So that's the idea of names. In other words, to tell us that the external part of the Jews went into Egypt, but That was the main work, not to get out of Egypt, but to bring the essence into Egypt, to make Egypt as much as possible into a holy place. Of course, Egypt in those days was impossible to do, but nowadays things have changed, and we can actually refine the whole world because of what we did in Egypt. Okay, a little bit more. Just like in all the Sippurim, from all the stories of the Torah, is Oich in them, a Faran Oro, there's a teaching, a Nitzchis, an eternal teaching. For Jeden door, for every single generation and every single place and every single person. What can we learn from this fact that all of the Jews were in Egypt, but not their essence, only their name, the external part of the Jews? And that was precisely the work, to take the external part of the Jews and to use that to fix up the world, because the external part of the Jews is connected to the internal part, to the essence of God, to bring that into the world. And what can we learn from that? In alle Zeiten, in all times, und in the schwerste Umständen, and in the most difficult situations, from Gullus, from exile, darf a Yid, a Jew, must wezen know, as darf sich nicht schrecken, he should not be afraid, und and certainly, tor sich nicht miyayesh, he should not, how do you say, give up, become depressed, chas v'shalom, God forbid. Varum, because going to despair. Varum, because the essence from a Yidden, the essence from a Jew, can find sich keinmal nid in Gullus. Because no matter what happens to a Jew, his essence is never in exile. Oif im, on the essence of a Jew, can keine nit meilen master sein, nothing can conceal. Even the Jews that were in the Holocaust and the concentration camps, in these terrible places, the worst places in the world you could possibly imagine. But, and I don't understand how this is even possible, but it happened, and it was very common that it happened. Suddenly he realized, hey, one second, these people are evil, and the reason they're doing this to me is because they're evil. They're just evil. There's no logic behind it. These people are just evil, and I'm not going to be evil. I'm not going to let evil conquer me. Where is there in my soul something that's so good that it can't be touched with by evil? That's the essence of the soul. In fact, that's the essence of the Jewish soul. And the essence of the Jewish soul is the Creator, pure God. And these people are pure destroyers, exactly the opposite of God. True, God is creating them also. So it must be, why is God creating them? I don't know. But one thing I do know, it can't be that they're going to have an effect on me. And so therefore, a Jew has to remember that no matter what situation he's in, it's not his essence that's in that situation. It's only his name, so to speak, the external of his soul, and the internal of his soul is always waiting for that connection, for you to connect to it. Noch mehr, and even more. The soul, the essence of the soul, it gives a power dem Yidden, to a Jew, dalamata, nit nispalveren, not to be affected by the exile. Und durchführen, and to go through, to experience sein pratiusdika avoda mit dem Guf, and he can, no, durchführen doesn't mean to experience, I'm sorry. Durchführen means to see, to accomplish his service with his body and his animal soul. Animal soul means your natural personality, right? Your urges, your desires, your things you like, things you don't like, to purify him, his body, his natural soul, and his everything around him. And this is a tremendous service an avoda was bring, can bring an aliyah, which brings an elevation, oichen etzem and neshamatib, into the essence of the soul. In other words, somehow or other, the Jew arouses, reveals the whole purpose that Adam, the first man, was put into the world. Namely, to fix the world, to elevate the world. That's the essence of the soul. That's the purpose, why the soul was created and why God made the world. And when a Jew does it today, that awakens that essence of the soul, the essence of the reason for creation. So to speak, it gives God pleasure to know that the reason he created the world is being carried out. Biz until v'shachanti b'tocham, and then that pleasure of God is revealed here. God reveals himself among us like it was in the Holy Temple. But it won't be just in the Holy Temple, it'll be everywhere in the whole world. Vosvet Niskala, which will be revealed, the Geula Shlema, in the total redemption of the Jewish people, Bakor of Mamash, immediately by means of the Moshiach. This is the speeches of the Rebbe, Tav Shin, Yud Tet, I'm sorry, I thought it was Tav Shin Tet. Tav Shin Yud Tet, 1969. I didn't see this little Yud, not 59. Okay, so my friends, that's why the book is called Shmot. It's called names, to let us know that God gave names to the Jews, namely the power to be in the world. That's the name. And the reason is because he wants us to fix up the world, and he wants us to know that that aspect of us, which is in the world, is only our external, but our internal essence is always connected to God. It's always connected to the commander-in-chief, the creator of the universe. And that's why we're here, in order to fix up the whole world. And we can do it because we have power constantly. We have a lifeline constantly connected to the creator of the universe to give us inspiration, to give us determination, to give us the power to defiance, and to conquer and illuminate and elevate and bring blessing to this whole miserable, dark, confusing, disappointing, frustrating world, to make it into a place that's happy and fulfilling and successful and blessed with Moshiach now. Have a good day. God willing, see you all tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning. Shalom uvracha.